The thing that was very interesting to me about acupuncture, it's funny, just a few minutes ago I was talking about how much I love shop class. I think it's really true. I do have this great love of working with my hands. I really do. And one of the things that I've loved about acupuncture, I think one of the things that drew me to it was it's a way of using my hands. And it's a way of engaging the body-mind without a bunch of blah, blah, blah. And I was very intrigued by that. I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. When I lived in Taiwan, I found that new language and sentence patterns can be acquired in the comfort of your living room, but to really give your language legs, it needs to be taken out for a spin in the wild. It's the only way to find the groove of local phrasing, cadence, and peculiarities of expression. I used to hang out at a little tea and antique shop on the corner of Yongkang Street and Alley 52 where I lived. It was a quiet corner in the bustle of Taipei, and I got to be friends with the Laoban, the guy who ran the place. It was a lovely way to spend an evening drinking tea and seeing just how far my sketchy Chinese could get me. Sometimes the issue was not my pronunciation, but how my Western thinking infused my language and the shape of the world. One night, we were discussing a project that I was working on, and I took my American way of thinking into Chinese and ran it right straight into a wall of consternation. In the States, with our acute sense of individuality, we tend to focus on our talents and abilities. We measure ourselves by being, air quote here, up to the task, and peg our value and self-worth on the metric of what we can do or accomplish. This rather took my friend off guard, and I was quickly told, it's not a matter of ability. He says to me, of course you have the ability. It's just a matter of time. Now, at first, my Western ears heard this as a polite Taiwanese preservation of face, but as we drank pu'er tea, syncopated with the tick-tock of an antique clock, as the topic of time and its influence on ability wound its way into the conversation with the other people sitting at the table drinking tea, I realized the greater truth of his words. As humans, we have tremendous ability to learn, to develop skills, and accomplish most anything upon which we set our hearts. It's simply a matter of time. Something might take years, decades, even a lifetime or two to accomplish. Relentless persistence, indeed, brings things to fruition in time. And it's also true, if it needs to be done before it can be accomplished, then for sure, it is time that is the limiting factor. It was a bit disorienting, dropping the story of ability and realize that anything could manifest with enough time and consistent movement toward a destination. The limit was not me. The limit is time, and while that is a real and true factor, it is best not confused with ability, which, with cultivation, is endless. Sometimes the lessons that come with acquiring another language, it's not the words, it's the perspective. Today, the guest of this conversation is me. Rick Gold, one of the founders of what used to be the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, and one of the guests of the history series. You'll find that conversation over in episode 323. Rick and I were hanging out at the Pacific Symposium a few months ago, and he said that he'd like to interview me for Qiological. That sounded like fun, and as a podcast host, I'm always keen to hear the questions and glimpse the inquisitive mind of someone else. So, today, Rick is driving, and I'm going along for the ride. Let's see where this goes. Stay with us. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear Don't Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Welcome to Qiological with our special guest today, the one and only Michael Max. Hi, I'm Rick Gold, and I have the absolute pleasure and honor to interview our host. I just so look forward to this. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have somebody else driving.
You ready to be a passenger? Yeah.
I'm ready to be a passenger. Let's see what you got here on. You know, I always like the scenic route.
Well, I just am so excited to have this opportunity to interview you and find out what's going on inside that beautiful head of yours. You've been doing this podcast since 2017. You have close to 350 episodes.
I know, it's crazy.
You're an oral historian of our profession in this country, and I really want to acknowledge that. You've accomplished something quite remarkable. You've allowed people with all different perspectives on our medicine to appear on your podcast. You've created something for the ages. And it's a little strange to say it's an oral history because it's electronic and it's recorded. But truly, you fall into line with the great oral historians throughout history. And I really want to acknowledge that. So congratulations. And I think, because I had such a curiosity about who you are and what brought you to do this, and what's made you stick with it for so long. Ideas are the easy part. Follow through and sticking with it, that's tough. That is really hard to accomplish, and you've really, really accomplished that. Then you continue to accomplish that. So let's go back. Let's meet Michael Max, find out what makes you tick, what brought you to the profession, and what brought you to create this podcast. So, where were you born?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
All right, you got two Cincinnati Ohioans on one podcast. Whoa,
That's right.
yeah. Were you as you grew up? Did you imagine becoming a doctor or a broadcaster?
No, I wanted to not be a doctor.
You didn't like blood.
I'm not kidding you. I had no desire to do medicine at all. I don't like being around sick people. And, I'm a nice Jewish boy, so, it's the late 50s, early 60s as I'm, a little kid. And what am I being pushed toward? Like, doctor or lawyer? Come on, Bubala. And neither of those had any interest for me. My favorite class in junior high, I remember coming home one day very excited from shop class. Where you build stuff. You use your hands and you make things. And Rick, I loved it. And I remember telling my folks, this shop class, I love this. It's so cool making things. I want to take more. And you can imagine where that went.
I don't even know if they offer shop in public schools any longer.
I don't think they do. And I think it's actually a big mistake.
Big mistake. Along with the arts. Because it truly is an art.
Well, it is. And so, I was just never interested. As far as being a podcaster, we didn't have podcast. I mean, I was a kid, right? When we was kids, we didn't have podcasting. The closest you could get was being an AV geek.
Right.
And that, first of all, you needed some real chops to be an AV geek in those days. There was tape and all kinds of equipment. And then there was the stigma of being an AV geek. And I wanted to be a cooler kid than that.
Okay, so we need to fast forward then quite a bit here. Were you on your college radio station?
No. None of this came. Podcasting did not come on my radar until 2014.
Well,
and I was at one of these little neighborhood networking things, which I usually didn't go to, but I'd been on sabbatical and I'd been away for months. I came back and I thought, I should go network a little. I hate going to these things, but I thought I should go anyway. I never, ever got a patient, ever, I don't think, from any networking that I did. But I meet this guy and he introduces himself. Hi, I'm Steve Stewart, and I podcast and I teach people how to podcast. And I'm thinking, so what? Big deal. But I'm a nicer person than that. And so I say to him, okay, podcasting, why would I want to do that? I've got a nice practice that I do, and I've got a great website. It brings me new patients every single week. People call and say, I want an appointment. Why would I want to do a podcast? And Steve Stewart says to me, oh, that's easy. Because the people who would listen to your podcast are not the people that would read your website. And I felt the ground under me wobble. I thought, I think he might be right. And it just engaged something in me. Oh, I think I want to look into that. I didn't need it for my practice. It's like my practice was fine. But the idea of oh, there's something with this podcast, huh? And I thought, well, maybe I could do something. Maybe I could like talk to friends. We could talk about Chinese medicine. Maybe other people would hear about it. And if we could talk about it in an accessible, plain English sort of way, maybe they would go call an acupuncturist and get some help. So I reached out to some friends, and we just started having conversations in everyday English about acupuncture with the idea of trying to educate the general public. That podcast was called Everyday Acupuncture, and it launched in early 2015. It's like, let me experiment. I'm curious, right? It was like shop class. The shop class that couldn't continue with because my folks wouldn't let me. Now I've got a shop class of my own. It's called a podcast. And it was fun. It was fun hanging with friends and gabbing about medicine. I used to do it all the time when I lived in Seattle. But after moving to St. Louis, not many people to talk medicine with. So it was fun to gab medicine and maybe help people. I started publishing those. And about 6 months in, I had acupuncturists emailing me and saying, wow, thank you, this is great. And I found it very confusing because it was very simple Chinese medicine. It's like Chinese medicine 101 for the general public, plain English. And acupuncturists were listening and they were enjoying it. And I was like, I didn't make it for you guys. Like, how come you like it? But I took that as like another nudge. Oh, well, if they like that, maybe they'll like something that's more deep and geeky. And that was the inspiration to spin off Qiological.
Yeah. Well, we've definitely jumped ahead a few steps because we went from not being interested in medicine to being one of the main voices of our profession to reaching the public. So let's fill in some of the gaps, okay?
Mm.
So what did you study in college?
Well, I studied, I didn't know what to study in college. I went to college because I didn't know what else to do. I worked for a while, but it's like, I'm supposed to go to college. I went to college. I ended up studying urban planning. Uh-huh. But as I got into my junior year, I became very disillusioned with all of it. And I didn't know what to do. And so rather than waste what little money my parents or I had, I dropped out of school at the end of my junior year because it just seemed like a waste of time. Mm-hmm. And I headed west because a friend said, hey, you can make some money planting trees in Oregon. And as a 21-year-old, I thought that sounds good. So I headed west and kind of had a summer of adventure.
This is in the 60s or early 70s?
This is in 1978.
Oh, late 70s.
Late 70s, 1978. And in that summer of adventure, I landed in Seattle. And I remember parking my VW van
of course
on First Avenue, walking down Virginia Street toward the Pike Place Market, looking out at the amazing view of the Sound and the Olympic Mountains. I think this is probably late May, early June. And I was like, oh, this is it, man. This is where I belong.
Michael in the Emerald City.
It was before it was the Emerald City. Back then it was called the Queen City. Later they called it the Emerald City.
That's funny because our hometown of Cincinnati is the Queen City.
Queen City. I know. It's hilarious. It's funny. These little synchronistic, these tiny little like thin layer connections, isn't it?
The nuggets.
Little nuggets. Yeah. So I ended up staying in Seattle. And I worked at the Pike Place Market for, 5 or 6 years.
Oh my.
I ended up working there on the day tables as a craftsman. I did leather work and then eventually got into glass blowing. Because guess what? I like working with my hands. And I gave it a go. Right? I used my hands to make my living. Just following my inclination. And it was great. I learned how to make stuff. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to do business. I learned how to manage money. I learned how to manage myself. And I did that for a number of years until I decided, maybe I actually do want to go do something else and drop back into school at the Evergreen State College, which is the first place, Rick, that I ever saw somebody demonstrate acupuncture. This is in 1984.
Now we're on the yellow brick road.
We're on the yellow brick road, although there were red bricks there. And I remember, because I was taking this integrated course called Human Health and Behavior, which was amazing. It was everything from microbiology to family systems therapy. I mean, it was this fabulous integrated course of study, everything from the biological to the psychological to the spiritual all mixed in. Evergreen was great in those days.
That's what we call integral education now.
It was integral education. It was fabulous. And we had a demonstration. Someone came in and did acupuncture. And I got to tell you, I could not have been more bored or disinterested. I mean, for whatever reason, it did not land. And this woman's going on about, we feel the pulses. It could have a quality of like pearls in a basin. And it's just, look, I'm an open-minded kind of hippy-dippy dude, but I had nowhere for that stuff to land. Nothing. I got a big nothing out of it. It's not that I didn't have a bad opinion about it. It just didn't land. It was just like, that's weird. I don't know what to do with it. It was some years later, after a friend of mine badgering me to go get some acupuncture for a chronic condition. And he badgered me. I mean, he was on my case. And I tried all kinds of things, homeopathy and this and that. And, it's Seattle. I'm open-minded. Tried a lot of stuff. Nothing helped. He says, go get some acupuncture. And to shut him up, I went to the local school like he suggested and went to the student clinic and saw a couple of interns and got some acupuncture. And there were 2 interns there. And one of them just happened to have hands. And I remember her putting a needle into my back. And it was as if I was a large, still body of water and someone had suddenly thrown in a pebble and everything rippled. It's like, whoa, wow. And then the other intern put a needle in and it went thunk. And then the first intern again puts a needle in. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Thunk. A back treatment that went like this. And I remember coming out of that treatment thinking, I don't know what that was, but that was something.
It's interesting how you were already able to discern a different quality of chi from the practitioners in that experience. And you're face down, too. It wasn't about eye contact or any of that.
Nope. She had hands.
Her hands were communicating her heart energy and Shen. And
yeah. So, look, I had a nice job doing high tech at that point. I'm working in the computer world and have a pretty good life. But I'm starting to use this acupuncture because, I don't know, something's there. And it didn't help my condition at first, but I noticed I was sleeping better. I noticed my digestion was working. I didn't realize I had a digestive issue. Now my digestion is working really well. It wasn't as irritable. It's like, this stuff is interesting. Eventually, my condition started to change. And I just started using acupuncture as my go-to for healthcare. And I did that for a number of years. And then I got curious. What's up with this? What is up with this stuff? How's this stuff work? What's going on? And I did so I asked my acupuncturist and she says, here, read this. And she hands me Web That Has No Weaver, which I read and I go, that's interesting. I have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, it's interesting. I have no idea how to make sense of this. So then I read Between Heaven and Earth, right? Ephraim and Harriet's book. Also, very interesting. I have no idea how to make sense of this stuff. So I just kind of muddle on with my life until a certain point where I was thinking, I don't know if I want to stay in computers as a long-term. I'd been in it for a number of years, and I don't know, I was thinking of a change. Didn't know what to do. And this acupuncture thing kept rattling around at the back of my mind, and it just wouldn't go away. So I checked myself into a school.
Wow.
And I talked to my original acupuncturist. This is several years. And I said, look, I don't know if I want to do this. I just paid off a student loan for a degree that I don't use. I don't know if I really want to do this. And she says, look, go for a quarter or two. If it's something that you want, you'll know within that time. You can continue. If it's not something you're interested in following, then you've learned more about something you're interested in, and you can just leave. Never hurts to know more about something you're interested in. You can't lose. That's what she said.
Good advice.
It's great advice. And so I went to school.
And that was in Seattle?
Seattle. The Seattle Institute of Oriental Medicine had just opened up. It wasn't even accredited yet. Okay. And I ended up going there.
And what year in the calendar and what year of your life are we in here?
This is 1995. And I was actually looking into it earlier than that. I had to do a year of prerequisites at a community college. Had to do my anatomy and microbiology and some stuff like that. Because they didn't teach that at Scion. Mm-hmm. It's like all the Western stuff, like bring it with you. We're not teaching it. So I did a year of prerequisites, and I think I started there in 95 is what it was. I was in the second class.
You're in your 30s by now?
I am in my late 30s at this point.
Late 30s?
Yeah.
My.
I was 41 when I graduated.
Interesting. And so when did the light bulb truly go on for you?
I'd say about 6 months into it. And again, it wasn't like, kaboom, this is it. It was more like, this is really, there's something here. It's more like a nudge, like a little itch or a little whisper. Mm-hmm. I remember talking to folks on the podcast. I talked to one cat because I like to ask them the same question. How'd you get into this? And he said, this is so great. He said, well, I was in a restaurant and I heard two women talking behind me, and one of them said, yeah, I just signed up for acupuncture school. And he thought to himself, yep, I'm going to do that too. And he went and signed up the next day.
Yeah, we've followed different paths to get to here. That's for sure.
We really do. I tend to be a little cautious, I guess you could say.
And was there, what about your personal life at that time? Did you have a marriage or children or?
No kids. I was married, had this nice job working in high tech. I'd gone from a hippie craftsman, like barely keeping the rice bowl full, to, a nice job in tech. I had a house, retirement funds, nice car, late model car, always started up when I turned the key, back when cars had keys.
And was your wife supportive of this shift in your focus?
Yeah, she was.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So
she was a psychotherapist. So, healing and that kind of thing, we both kind of caught into that. Somehow, even though I was avoiding medicine, healing was interesting to me.
And I imagine what you saw, how you could use your verbal and personal skills and communication effectively as a practitioner, that it helped stir your passion more.
I don't know. I think that might have come later. The thing that was very interesting to me about acupuncture, it's funny, just a few minutes ago I was talking about how much I love shop class. But I think it's really true. I do have this great love of working with my hands. Mm-hmm. I really do. And one of the things that I've loved about acupuncture, I think one of the things that drew me to it was it's a way of using my hands. And it's a way of engaging the body-mind without a bunch of blah, blah, blah. And I was very intrigued by that. Because my wife was a psychotherapist. I actually studied psychology. But it was like, man, by the time I got done studying that, I didn't want to do it. I wanted nothing to do with it, really. All that talking didn't fit for me.
And did you resonate with your herbal studies well?
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
So you continued your computer job during school?
I did. Yes, I managed to create some new services at the company that I worked for that allowed us to do better customer service for the people at that company. We started to bring things in like remote email and dial-in capabilities. This is before the internet hit. And I was able to increase our private network services. I ended up increasing the services and the support in the amount of time that the services were available, like 24/7, and saved us a bunch of money, and had me in the office 20 hours a week and on call for the rest of my life, and that let me get through school. So I was very fortunate that I had a job that gave me the flexibility to be able to do school and do work and pay my mortgage.
And with the cohort you were in school with, were you on the older part of the spectrum?
No, I'd say I was pretty much in the middle.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, and these days, a lot of us were on second and third careers.
Yeah, there's been a tidal shift in the profession, the educational component now.
Yeah. So, I'm in my late 30s. There was a woman who was in her, I think, early 50s. Some other folks around my age, including a good friend who also came from Missouri, where I grew up, even though I was born in Cincinnati. So it was kind of fun having two corn-pwned dudes from Missouri in the class. And then there was a younger woman. I think she was the younger woman, maybe late 20s, early 30s. So I'd say we went from like the early 30s to the 50s in terms of cohort.
And you went straight through school and sat for your boards.
Yep, and then went to work.
And then opened a clinic, opened a clinical practice.
Opened a clinical practice, found a space that I could share with another acupuncturist, and
Still in Seattle.
Still in Seattle.
And what was happening in your idea about what was happening in the profession at that time? The school became accredited while you were there, I imagine.
The school became accredited while I was there, much to my great relief.
And the state board was the national you took?
The state took the national exam as criteria for licensure. So I took the NCCAOM, and that got me a license in Washington State.
Yeah, and because of your podcast, you knew that exam didn't just get handed down from above. It took a lot of years and a lot of really dedicated people to get that to happen.
Rick, I had no idea the magic that guys like you made happen. I had no idea of the sort of emergent phenomena that happened in the 80s that allowed our profession to self-organize. I'm hitting it here in the mid-late 90s, and it's just like, oh yeah, those people with, the hoop to jump through, and I'll jump through the hoop so I can get my license.
You took it for granted.
Yeah, I didn't just take it for granted. I had a little chip on my shoulder about it. Oh, these people and all their requirements, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I was not very appreciative. I didn't know to be appreciative. In some ways, it's not my fault. Just like I think it's not anyone's fault. So often we're in the midst of something and it might be really, really great and wonderful. We have no idea how great and wonderful it is because it's the only thing we've known.
Yeah.
Right? So let me give you an example of this. I'm in my clinic today and someone's phone isn't quite working the way they wanted to. And he says, these things, they never work. It's like, nope, you're wrong. It always works. 99.99% of the time, it works, and it works perfectly. It's that 0.0001% when you notice.
Just the other day, I was speaking with someone, and I said, "Can you imagine the visionary people who invested to build the cell towers before there was one person using a cell phone?" And the genius that goes into creating our phones. We take even our kids watch this remodel a house, and and I said, "You realize when you turn on a light switch, what happened for that to happen?" From the creation of electricity, the invention of, and then the wiring of the house, and then so we take so much for granted. And I think gratitude's one of the things we can do to help alleviate our blaseness about all the beauty and the miracles that are around us pretty much all the time, if we slow down and pay attention.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
I'm really with you on that. There is so much, look, even thinking the political moment as well. We live in a time, and in a country too, may I add, where you can pretty much say whatever the hell you want, right? This place sucks. We can say that. How lucky are we to live in a place where you can say, I think this place sucks? Because most places in the world, you do that, not so good.
No.
I mean, just small things like that. So gratitude. Let's dig into this for a moment, because I think it's really important. I think it's really key. And how do I say this? It's almost like a meme at this point. Like, gratitude, yeah, it's a great thing. Like meditation, it's a great thing. I think there's a lot here. And I'd like to get some of your sense of it. Look, we're both nice Jewish boys. I don't know if you got this. I remember going to Hebrew school. Again, something I was not grateful for. I did not want to be there. But I remember one of my teachers, and this made no sense at the time. And he was talking about the prayers that you do before eating your food, because, you want to be grateful for that. But then there's also some prayer for like the ability to digest it and eliminate it. That like at every step of every process to recognize the wonder and the miracle and great, it's like, it's great to be able to eat. Are we also grateful that we can also poop? I mean, is it possible to take our vision and our awareness and our perception and our sensibilities into like all phases of something that way? But evidently, I remember this teacher telling us, here's the prayers for these different things that we would usually never think about. But I'd like to get your sense of gratitude practice, beyond gratitude is helpful.
I think it's not just helpful, it's vital. And I think it places us in the circle of life and a recognition of our place and our responsibility also. Even you were talking about somehow that food got to your plate. Someone recognized that this was something worthy of growing. It wasn't if there's a mushroom, someone tested it and found out that they didn't convulse after eating it. So up and down the pike, and it seems that with gratitude, the neural connections in our brain begin to form, and it becomes a self-generating positive process, and it can take us away from the persistent worries and the deeply embedded stimulus response to fear and anxiety that really shapes human life out of necessity in our heritage, but often misplaced now or overzealous. We have anxiety not about survival, but more just existential things. It's not just intention, too, because I find that with intention, like when I put a needle in stomach 36, I'm thinking, what's the positive things that I'm doing? What am I asking the body's resonance to vibrate at, and what do I want to accomplish with this? And with that comes the gratitude that there is that potential, and it was discovered by ancient people in our medicine, for instance. The herbs, when we study the herbs, I mean, it's boom, it's mind blowing how everything somehow was tested And people were cognizant and resilient and persistent and recorded their responses to these things and then responses of their patients. And I think all this falls under this, in my own heart and mind, the gratitude that I get to practice this medicine, for instance, and my gratitude that I get to be alive in this world, that I get to experience the diversity of human emotions, and I have the capacity to learn. I have the capacity to teach, and I think it helps create an environment of the potential of our evolution of a species as a species. And I think that's a vital, we aren't here just to survive, we're here to evolve. And I think that gratitude and recognition of the steps that bring us to each moment has value. Something I give to a lot of times to patients is, after the needle's in and there's a period of quiet time, is to become aware of the space between thoughts and allow yourself to dive deeply into that space and then observe, and just, or not even necessarily observe, because observing, you're one step away. Just be in that space between thoughts. And most of the time, it's experience the bliss of that space.
Yes, what a relief.
Oh, God. What a challenge. But I think that's one of the extraordinary things about our clinical capacity, is we can provide those moments in a unique way, quite profound and quite magical and repeatable. I guess if it's not always magic, if it's repeatable. I mean, there's no trick to it. I mean, it's real, and it's penetrating, and it's somatic. And now we're discovering it's hormonal and it's bioelectrical, and it's all these other things too, as we see an integration of our medicine into the Western model. So we're blessed and privileged to practice this medicine, and it's really quite remarkable.
I totally agree. I've been at it for 25 years now, and again, it came as this kind of a nudge. I want my life to be different. I've enjoyed this computer thing. It's been good. It's not bad. But there was this nudge.
Yeah. It was a nudge and not a nudge.
It was a nudge and not a nudge. And I think that's important. A nudge will take you in one direction, and a nudge will take you in another. I have found that the nudges, they've never been wrong. They might take a long time to come to some sort of fruition that I go, oh, that's what this is.
As we look back with awareness, we see how things that seem to be irritants or even positive, potentially negative, really were important steps on the path to where we are. And if we have gratitude, we express it then. But let's come back to Michael Max and out of the philosophy. So you're happily practicing, you're digging being a practitioner, and are you still a consultant in the computer world?
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. No, I don't consult in the computer world at all. I'm a practitioner. It's funny. Sometimes my podcasting friends will will say things like, so are you quitting your day job? It's like, why would I want to quit I love my day job. No, when I left the computer world, as wonderful as it was, I thought, that's it. I'm done. Well, it turns out that the computer world has been very helpful to me in being a podcaster. Because, how do I say this? What first got me into the computer world was a big surprise to me. I was in graduate school, actually. And word processors were just kind of coming into being. And I thought, hey, this stuff looks cool. Like, I can really get work done in a hurry. And it turned out I had a knack for learning software. I can't code a computer. I don't know how to do that. But I had a knack for understanding software and had a knack for telling other people how to use it, which is what got me started. And having that knack for understanding how the tool works, like what's the tool and what can you do with it? Again, I'm back to shop class in some ways. So that time in the computer world made me very comfortable with, here's a groovy set of tools evolving very quickly, and you can have a lot of fun with it.
Certainly. So you're busy in your practice. When you met that person who talked to you, said a little spark, a little nudge about podcasting.
The ground shook.
The ground.
I want to be very clear about this. The ground shook.
Okay.
When he said that, it's like the ground went liquid for a moment.
Are you still in Seattle at that time?
No. I've been in St. Louis. I've been in St. Louis at that point for about 5 years.
So what sprung you from Seattle?
Yeah. A girl.
You want to expound, or we'll just accept it?
A girl in China.
Okay, I'm lost.
All right, let's back up here a bit. So I lived in China for a while.
So you were married to a psychotherapist when we last...
Okay, all right, yeah, all right. Sorry, I'm like in my 60s. It's convoluted at this point.
We don't have to be linear. That's not a problem. I just want to tie some
that's not a problem
up.
for us. So a couple years after graduating from acupuncture school, the relationship with my previous wife, as is sometimes the case with previous wives, decided to dissolve that. And so I had an opportunity when I was, I guess I'm about 43, almost 44 at that point. I don't have a relationship. I now don't have a house. I've got a tiny fledgling acupuncture practice, but I've got some open space now. And I'm a fairly new acupuncturist, and so I thought, maybe I should go and study in China for a little while. So I knew Andy Ellis, because that's who I got my herbs from. And I knew he'd been to China. And I knew he knew something about Chinese. And I said, hey, Andy, I'm thinking of going to China for a spell to study. Where should I go? And Andy Ellis says to me, how long are you going for? I said, I don't know, 6 months, maybe a bit more. I don't know. It's kind of open-ended, really. He goes, okay, good. In that case, why don't you go to Taiwan and study some Chinese and then go to the mainland and do Chinese medicine in Chinese?
So that's what you did.
It was another one of those moments where I kind of felt the ground go a little bit liquid under me. He says, you should go to Taiwan, study some Chinese. And I thought, I'm going to do that. Didn't even, I'm like that guy. That was a moment. I'm like the guy I told you about. He overhears people saying, I'm going to go to Chinese medicine school, and he does that. And he said, go study some Chinese in Taiwan. I'm like, yep, I'm doing that.
And you had any proficiency in other languages at that time? Or?
No, I'm terrible with languages. I'm really bad at it. And I had Chinese at SciOM because their program is geared to teaching you to read medical Chinese. Not read menus, not read newspapers, read medical Chinese. And the program wasn't that strong at that point. They were just getting it up and running. And I'm a dull tool in the language shed. So I could do it a little bit, but I couldn't do it that well. So I thought, okay, go learn some Chinese. I can do that. I think I can do that. Why not? I mean, I've got an open-ended thing here right now with my life. So I went to Taiwan to do that.
So a language institute there.
I went to I went to Shidai. I went to the Guoyu Zhongxin, what do they call it, Mandarin Training Center in Taipei, and I did that for like a year and a half.
Oh wow!
'Cause I'm slow.
So you stayed a whole year and a half.
Well, I'm slow at language acquisition.
No, I understand that. I mean, you could probably be studying for 10.5 years and still be a beginner. But that means you walked away from your life in America for that year and a half.
And then I went to Beijing.
Uh-huh. Were you observing practitioners during that time, or did you go to Snake
Yes.
Alley? Did you go to Snake Alley in Taipei?
I did go to Snake Alley. That place was pretty wild.
That was a Fellini experience, wasn't it?
That's a Fellini experience. Yeah, they got that crazy night market and
Yeah.
Snake Alley, and then that's a wild scene. Longshan Temple right there. Then alleys full of hookers. It's a crazy place.
Fortune tellers and face readers.
Fortune tellers, all kinds of fortune tellers, and the street food over in that night market. Oh, yeah, it's great. No, I did meet a doctor in Taiwan because I got really sick when I first got there, oddly enough. And there was another friend of Andy's who was in Taiwan brushing up her Chinese, also a Chinese medicine doctor with plans to go to the mainland. So we became friends. And she took me to see this old guy for some herbs for my cold. And this guy is a fossil. He's in his early 90s. He's got like 3 teeth. Pictures of him treating Chiang Kai-shek's son. Right? The dude's been around. Yeah. And he prescribed a formula. You're going to love this, Rick. He prescribed a formula for me. I got it in the powdered herbs. I had no idea what it was. So we asked his herb girls who had put it together, what's in this? Because, I'm trying to learn something even though I'm sick. And it turns out he's given me like 4 or 5 different formulas, all mixed together and then modified with a few single herbs. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the hell? If I attempted a formula like this with my teachers, they would have been like, why don't you go back to the drawing board, Mr. Max? That's, you're crazy. But I took the herbs home. I took them. I figured I'm going to be in the hospital tomorrow. I was really sick, very bad head cold, super bad. And I always get bad coughs. That's the thing that originally took me to Chinese medicine. I was not expecting anything helpful. But I woke up the next day 80% better. And here's the kicker. I usually get a dry, hacking cough. It can go on for a long time. I got up the next day and coughed, and I had a mouthful of gooey, easy to expectorate phlegm. It was a miracle. So as my Chinese got better, I would spend time in his clinic.
Oh, wow, great.
And he very generously took me in.
Were you treating people in your program or at that time? Were you honing your clinical skills?
There was no program. I'm hanging out with this old doctor. I'm mostly learning Chinese at this point, and then I'm practicing a little on foreigners, friends and students that I have there just to keep my skills up.
Did you get a scooter? Everybody in Taipei has a scooter. I remember walking on the sidewalk in Taipei, dodging scooters like a pinball.
That's right. Remember that bumper sticker? If you don't like the way I drive, stay off the sidewalk. I eventually did get a scooter. Yes.
Yeah. Were you getting up and going to Tai Chi in the parks in the morning, or?
Initially, no, because I was just studying Chinese. I was spending a lot of time at it because, again, I'm kind of a dull tool in the language shed. So it took a lot of effort.
Well, you had a lot of dedication. I mean, you're already in your 40s at that point. That's not usually the high point of a learning curve.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So, but you kept your license active in America as a practitioner.
Oh yeah. And then I went to Beijing for a few years and studied there.
A few years.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, I got an introduction from one of my teachers to a Shanghan Lun, very, very well-known Shanghanlin doctor in Beijing. And so I thought, yeah, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go to Beijing and study Shanghanlin with this doctor. And it turns out my language wasn't quite up to snuff. And I just couldn't quite keep up. I studied with her for a bit, but I couldn't quite do it. I was almost there, but I wasn't there well enough. And so I stopped studying with her. I did study at some of the hospitals as well. So when I got to Beijing, I was studying in hospitals. And I was studying with the Shanghanlin doctor. But I had to give that up with her because I just wasn't, I couldn't pull it off. It's very disappointing. I had to go back to language study.
And around you in Beijing at that time, there's massive amount of building and commerce, and you're after the beginning of the economic miracle, I guess. Things are really shifting.
This is 2002 that I was in Beijing, so it was already pretty built up.
Yeah.
Man, I remember getting there in the fall, and it's like I couldn't see to the end of a city block. It was like science fiction level pollution.
It's something else.
Yeah, it was really something else.
So then what nudged you to come back to America?
Well, so I was in Beijing for about 2 years, and then I really missed Taiwan. And I wanted to study more with this old doctor. So I reached out to him and said, I'm thinking about coming back to Taiwan. Can I spend time in your clinic again? He said, yeah, come on back. So I went back to Taiwan to spend another year and a half there. And so it's 5 years before I make it back to America.
So when you got in touch with your teacher in Taiwan, was it through a letter with a stamp on it? Was it a phone call?
Oh, it's a good question.
Where was technology?
I think I called him.
And was the communication in Chinese, in Mandarin?
当然是，他不会讲英文.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he didn't speak any English.
Uh-huh.
I think I called him up. As I recall, I called him up. He didn't do email. I think I called him. So we're back to Taiwan. But something very important happened when I was in Beijing. About the time I stopped studying with that doctor because I couldn't keep it up. Dan Bensky, Craig Mitchell, and Dr. Ma Shou-chun were in Beijing. They were doing some PhD study at one of the schools there. And Craig Mitchell, we're having dinner, and I'm like all upset because I couldn't hack it with Dr. Nia. And he hands me this thin little book, 中医师打雷方, 10 Key Formula Families in Chinese Medicine. It's a thin little book. He says, Craig Mitchell hands it to me, and he says, Chinese is hard. Keep at it. In the meantime, read this. It's really interesting. And it's about Shanghanlin formulas. So a little something to keep you going. And when I first start reading the book, I'm thinking, yeah, my Chinese is really bad because I've never read anything like this about herbs before. And as I continue to read the book and I realize I actually am understanding it, I realize, wow, this is a treasure. This is a whole different perspective on looking at herbs and looking at constitutions. This is the work of Dr. Huang, who I think many of you know about. And eventually I had the very good fortune to translate that book into English. So, some misadventures along the way, but also fantastic opportunities that came out of really moments of abject failure. Mm-hmm. Anyway, 5 years later, I come back to the United States.
What instigated the change then?
I felt like I had a pretty good sense of what my teacher was teaching, but mostly it was a sense that if I didn't leave Taiwan soon, then I probably wouldn't leave. Because I really enjoyed the life there. And Taiwan's
Were you coming back to see family every now and then, or were you?
Every now and then. I think I came back 2 or 3 times in that 5 years. Yeah. But I really enjoyed living in Taiwan.
Taiwan's wonderful. When I went there, it was a revelation. I just couldn't believe how much I enjoyed it and how good the food was.
What was a revelation for you about the place?
Well, I was much more of a fan of the People's Republic at that time. This is in the 70s and early 80s. I was in Taipei and toured Taiwan and did some clinical observation in 86. And I thought it was Chinese light, I guess. I don't really know exactly what my silly mind was thinking, but I've loved the vibrancy of Taiwan, the physical beauty, the kindness of the people. I was getting up early and going to the parks, and there were just hundreds of people doing Tai Chi. And I got drawn into a group that was doing the Yang style form I was familiar with, and they took me to dim sum. And
Yeah.
it was just, in the National Museum, I mean, gosh, and the story behind the bringing of those artifacts out of China was an intriguing story. It was just really very, very special. And certainly was because I had been in Beijing and Shanghai in '81, and at that time, mainland China was still, everybody was wearing blue, and there was 2 hotels in Beijing that was all they had, and Shanghai was very rustic, I guess I'll use the word, and Taiwan was a bustling, modern place, and I remember the airport was very, very modern, and the highway going into the city. I mean, the airport's about an hour out of the city, and it was a very positive experience for me. And I understand how you would, be intrigued by it and stay. But again, you were at a different stage of your life. You had already been married, a professional. You're in your I guess you're in your late 40s almost now.
Mid-40s at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad we're having this discussion, and maybe your listeners are too, because I don't know if everybody realized how deeply embedded you are in the medicine, in the culture, and in the language. It's very impressive.
I just kind of followed it, and at a certain point, I wasn't going to leave until I felt like I'd squeezed something of value out of it. I wanted enough language that I could do something. I wanted enough learning that the trip would have been worthwhile. Not just like, oh yeah, I went to Asia, but I needed to feel like I had something tangible that would allow me to understand and use the medicine and maybe even, hopefully even, share it with my colleagues.
Yep.
Right, which I was able to do with Wang Huang's book.
And thank you for that contribution, sir. So while you're there, in your mind, is home Seattle? If you're thinking if I was going to go home, would be Seattle?
In my mind, home is Seattle. Yeah. And so I decide I'm going back. And before I go back, because, I've been working my ass off for almost 5 years at this point, I decide I'm going to go back to the mainland, just take a walkabout for a few months, just stroll around China. It's like I got enough Chinese, I can do that at this point. And I've been working hard, so now I'm going to go not work and just go enjoy China for a few months. Although I had a little translation project I was working on for the Lantern at that point. So I just, I took that and was hanging out and ended up going to Yangshuo. I thought I'd go to Yangshuo for a few days. Yangshuo is just outside of Guilin. It's that place with the beautiful gumdrop mountains and the rivers. Mm-hmm. And I met a girl there.
Uh-huh.
I met a girl, and that was a girl that later I went back to China to see, if there might be something here. I went back to Seattle, 3 years in Seattle, and then back to Beijing and see what might happen with this girl.
And?
We ended up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Was she a practitioner of Chinese medicine, or?
Not at all. She'd like to be, but there's no schools here in the area. But
so this is your wife?
This is my current wife. Yes.
Wow. So there is a love story in there.
There's a love story in there.
So she didn't want to come back to St. Louis. So what?
No, she was happy just to get out of China, I think. She was happy to go wherever we were going to go.
So
she was up for an adventure.
So you went back to St. Louis because you had roots there?
We went to St. Louis partly because of roots. I grew up here. I was born in Cincinnati, but grew up in St. Louis. And what happened is we've been trying to get her a visa to come to the States. And that just wasn't coming through. Not coming through. I was working for a while at PMPH in Beijing, but that just wasn't my cup of tea. And trying to think, like, what next? Do we go back to the States? Do I stay here in China? Things are going nice with the girl. Buddy of mine from St. Louis, who has an acupuncture clinic, says, I'm going back to the West Coast. If you'd like this clinic, I can make it very easy for you to walk into it. He had a very nice, very busy clinic. And I said to him, thanks much. That's really a generous offer. I grew up in St. Louis. I have really no interest in going back. Thanks much. The universe, being what it is, 3 days later brings forth the visa for the girl. So, we have an open door to St. Louis. I guess we'll go there.
Very cool.
Here we are, almost 15 years later.
And your national license transferred to Missouri as far as being a practitioner?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you've got to go through the rigmarole here and fill out the papers, that kind of thing. But, the nice thing about an NCCAOM licensure, as long as you keep it up, right, you got to keep paying them every 4 years and recertifying. But then whatever state that you go to, they'll send along that you're a qualified practitioner. And so, it's kind of nice.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go take exams in each state. They just say, yeah, this guy's qualified, and you get a license and you go to work.
So you come back to America and the landscape of our profession has evolved. It's become a little more mainstream probably. Mm-hmm. There's probably a little more insurance coverage.
Depends on where you live.
And you were able to, you walked into an existing practice and were able to nourish it and grow it.
Yes.
So you're doing all that now. You're well into your late 40s.
Yeah.
And
maybe early 50s at this point. Probably early 50s. Because I remember being back in Nanjing, working on the book with Dr. Huang, right about the time I turned 50. I remember turning 50 and deciding to go to Yixing to go buy some teapots. And I got on one of these little buses that take you between towns. This is on my 50th birthday. I'm going to Yixing. I'm so excited. Yixing, this is like Mecca for teapots. And halfway to Yixing, I have a panic attack. Remember it so clearly. I had a panic attack. I am flipping out. I'm 50 years old. I don't have a house. I've got a practice in Seattle, but no house. I'm driving a crappy car. Haven't put money in a retirement account for I can't tell you how long. I don't have a relationship because I'm just starting to kick things off with this woman I met some years ago. I felt like I had nothing. It's like everything I thought I was supposed to have at the age of 50, Rick, I had none of it. And I'm on this bus with chickens and smoking Chinese people and spit on the floor. And I'm actually kind of losing my mind. It was very scary. And I don't know where this stuff comes from sometimes, but there was this thought that comes up. I'm so grateful for this. I had this thought that came up that was like, all right, Mr. Max, you have totally screwed your life up. Congratulations. Fair enough. What would you have changed in the past 10 years to make it different? Guess what answer I got?
Nothing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing.
The truth is, not a thing. I wouldn't have changed any of it. None of it. And so now here I am, 50 years old, on the way to Yixing, coming off of a panic attack, realizing sometimes you just need to completely rearrange what you think it's about.
Change of perspective. Same data, different perspective, different outcome.
I'm telling you, my friend, I don't know where it came from because I was pretty flipped out at that moment. I don't know where that kind of consciousness comes in sometimes, to be able to not talk yourself out of it, but just recognize where I've been holding ideas that were flawed.
Yeah. You accessed your innate intelligence, your higher self.
I don't know. Grace of God.
Okay. So I don't want to lose our listeners, so I'm going to keep the flow going here. So you're back in St. Louis. You have a burgeoning relationship, a growing practice. You meet someone at an event. The earth shakes. and you become a oral historian of traditional Chinese medicine.
Should put that on my card. I like that.
How did you come up with the name Qiological?
Oh my God, this is great. I have a lovely patient who is, she works with her hands. She's kind of a poet. I mean, she's like truly a poet. And I think she's from Scotland or Ireland, someplace. She's got a great accent, and she comes out of a treatment one day, and she goes, "Oh, Michael Max, what was that? I don't know what you did. That was absolutely Qiological." And I'm like, Qiological? I pull out a yellow Post-it notepad and I write down the word Qiological. This is before I was ever podcasting. And I put it in my desk drawer because that's funny, right? Qiological. It's like, I just wrote it down because it tickled me. And I do that kind of thing. I hear something, I was like, oh yeah, write that down. And years later, I'm looking for a name for the podcast. And I came across the yellow Post-it note, Qiological. Like, yep, that's it.
Wow. So with the podcast, I mean, I really don't know the mechanism except for, we're recording this and you're on Spotify and services like that. But, anyone who might be thinking of doing a podcast, what are the next steps?
Well, it's fairly simple these days.
I mean, how'd you get the word out about what you were doing? You already had the original, well, even before the Qiological, you had your original one, Everyday Acupuncture.
That's right.
How did people find you?
That's a good question. Well, for one, you can go to Apple Podcasts or wherever, and you can search for whatever subject you're interested in. I think that's initially how it grew. People just search acupuncture podcast, something with a name like Everyday Acupuncture Podcast, very easily. And I think that's how the first one grew. Just very organic, people doing search. And then Qiological, I think I probably had a mailing list. Mostly what I've done, I think, to help grow Qiological is just remind people, hey, if you like the podcast, tell your friends.
Mm-hmm. Well, the quality
Word
of
of mouth is always the best.
Yeah, and the quality of what you're doing is certainly, but you don't really have a marketing budget per se.
No. I mean, other than like a newsletter and no, I not really.
Your website.
I expect people to talk about it if they like it.
Can you share with the audience the scope of how many people you're reaching? How many listens you get per episode?
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell sometimes because just because there's a download doesn't mean people have listened to it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you the downloads.
Sure.
Generally speaking, an episode after it's been out for a month probably has around 2,000 to 2,300 downloads. Mm-hmm. And of course, people can backload the whole back catalog. They can download that and listen to any podcast. And we have something like 30,000 downloads a month of the podcast in total.
30,000.
Yeah.
Unique visitors that download?
Well, not necessarily unique.
No, okay.
But, in any given week, I think we probably have 1,000 to 1,200 unique listeners.
And that's really without you doing any kind of social media pushing or...
Well, I've got a little social media going these days, but look, I'm kind of a believer in truth in advertising. So I'm not trying to get Qiological into the ears of everybody in the universe. Qiological really is for students and practitioners of Chinese medicine. I mean, civilians they're welcome to listen if they want to.
And I hope they do, because it really shows the level of competency and intelligence, I think, that's happening in our profession.
Mm.
I mean, it's impressive.
So you think it would be helpful for people that are non-practitioners, is what I'm hearing you say.
Some of your episodes, for sure. And I mean, that you could categorize, episodes that have more public general interest. But yeah, I mean, for instance, it was part of your story. I mean, I can't tell you how many people over the years have shown interest as patients. And I say, well, why don't you just read The Web That Has No Weaver, and let's, and see, we'll talk about it. Or have Between Heaven and Earth if they have more of a spiritual, psychological interest. But yeah, how many people that have been helped by acupuncture become acupuncturists is probably a fairly significant number, especially when it becomes second and third careers, or second generation practitioners now in our country.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner, because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi, and that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
And I'm delighted to say there are people who have listened to the podcast that have then gone on to become acupuncturists. It's been gratifying. So yeah, I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about it, that there could be a wider appeal, but yeah, I think there probably could be a wider appeal.
And do you use your opening essays as like blog posts?
No, they're just little opening riffs. You can only get them on the podcast.
And are those scripted?
I have a writing practice that I sit down and think things through. I write almost every day. It's actually something I started doing when I was in Taiwan. It just spontaneously arose. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since. And so those little editorials just come from what I'm chewing on myself.
Because I mean, I'm speaking as a fan right now too. I mean, I think from the beginning people could tell I'm a fan. That you come up with some pearls. You really do. Not necessarily pearls in a porcelain bowl. That's for the insiders that know our profession. But really, if some young MBA came along and saw what you accomplished, they'd go, my God, we could blog you and grow your audience, yada, yada, yada. But it's grown organically, and it's really commendable that you're reaching that many people. And I know around Pacific, here in San Diego, there's a buzz. When you have a new episode, there's a buzz. And the students are listening. And
what are they saying? I'm so curious. You say there's a buzz. What's that buzz like?
I have to say that my daughter is a student at the school, and you met her, and they talk about the episodes, and they look forward to your new releases. I don't know what they apply in the clinics but there's certainly clinical gems that your speakers come up with. And I think your history, you and I encountered each other with sort of history. We honor the ancients in our profession, but we just take for granted our schools here. And the literature, the amount of literature we have to study with now is amazing.
It's incredible.
And it's just a fraction of what's potential. And I think you're encouraging the new generations to really become more self-aware and more conscious about the heritage that they're part of. My daughter didn't want to follow. She kept saying, "I don't want to follow in your footsteps." I said, "You're not going to follow in my footsteps. I want you to stand on my shoulders and go much farther than I've gone." because you have the potential. You have the gifts.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. Some of the battles we had to fight. I mean, how many times did you have to explain to people in the early days about acupuncture? Now they just sign up. They're referred by their doctor or their therapist or their friends. It's a totally different landscape now, and you're helping. You're helping pave that road, and it's really great.
I've been really fortunate. First of all, that my friend badgered me and I went and got some acupuncture. And secondly, to have the great privilege of studying a medicine that's allowed me to sit in a room with anybody. They could even be in the process of dying, and I don't see them as sick people. Like I said, one of the issues I had with medicine as a young person is I don't want to be around sick people. And because of the ways that we have of being with people and because of the ways we have of understanding how nature works, we have this fantastic sense. We have this idea of the Zheng Qi. There's this thing in us that's upright. It's always there. Up until the moment of death, it's there. There's always something upright. It's not just sickness. There's other things as well. And, to have that great privilege to gain that perspective, have a set of tools, have a set of perspectives, filters, lenses and prisms, as a old series that I used to listen to on tape at my school, some lectures on Shanghan Lun. Not just to be able to help people with their illness or their health in our clinics, but to be able, Rick, to take these perspectives that Chinese medicine is built on and see it flow through how society works, to see how it works in a relationship, to understand something of the cycles of aging. It's truly been a treasure.
Absolutely.
To have been exposed to this, and the people that have taken their time to help me learn this. I love what you say about we stand on the shoulders of others, and we have shoulders, hopefully, that allow others to stand upon. And I want to put in a plug for, like you said, we like to honor, the elders, and we often think of the elders as being Zhang Zhongjing and Sun Simiao and, like the really, really old famous doctors. Again, you guys at the beginning that were following something and you had no idea where it was going to lead to. There was no profession yet. There wasn't even an idea of a profession, but guys like you, there's a thing here and I'm following it. You blazed a path for people like me. And yeah, I want to give a little shout out to I'm going to call you guys the recent elders. You gave me the possibility of stepping from one profession into another. So I'm grateful.
It's a privilege, really. Thank you for coming along.
What else do you need to know?
I went back and listened to some of your earliest podcasts in preparation for our chat today. And is there a way you were sort of like a fully formed idea with episode 1 that I heard you were talking about children's ear problems with a doctor in Chicago. I forget his name right now.
I can see his face. I'm blanking on the name too. It was a while ago.
Really. It was, so you already had a fully formed,
Dave Miller.
David Miller, right. You already had a fully formed concept, and you even had a few sponsors from the beginning. Did they carry over from the everyday?
Yeah, okay. So here's a piece I hadn't talked about, so let's fill that in for you. At that point, I probably had 50-ish episodes under my belt with Everyday Acupuncture. And so I had a little bit of a sense of how to sit and listen. But really, I have to tell you, where I've learned to sit and listen, it didn't come from podcasting. It came from sitting in clinic with patients.
The treatment room.
It really does. I've been able to take that skill, and use it in podcasting. It's very helpful. It's allowed me to do what I do. So there's that. Everyday Acupuncture, because it was for a very broad audience. It's hard to get sponsorship for something like that. Any kind of meaningful sponsorship. But if you have a niche podcast, let's say you're a collector of chameleons, right? It's the Chameleon Collector Podcast. Guess what? You're going to be able to get sponsorship from people that sell things to chameleon aficionados. I'm serious.
Yeah, bow ties for chameleons is what I saw.
Bow ties for chameleons, right? And so when I took this idea and took it from everyday acupuncture into Qiological, now we're going to go deep and geeky into Chinese medicine. Civilians probably aren't going to listen too much. Now you've got the opportunity to put your audience in front of people that would like to get in front of that audience. And so I had sponsorship from the very beginning of Qiological. It was part of the experiment at Qiological. I wonder if I can make a little money with it too. Can this thing be self-supporting? And I've had sponsorship ever since. It's how we have the podcast. I've tried different models, including more of a paywall membership model. But really what works on the internet is advertising. That's actually how it works. And so you could say I have an advertising agency that uses its funds to do a podcast. And I'm very keen on bringing on sponsors who have something of value to share with the listeners so that you're not fast forwarding through Athletic Greens or something like that. I want to bring the listeners something that will bring them value in their clinical work.
Beautiful. What are your thoughts about the profession 10 years from now, 15?
It's very, very hard to see the future. It's very hard to see the future. And I know for myself, so often in my life, I've had ideas at certain times about how things were, and I get 10, 12, 15 years down the road, and I go, yeah, nope, I don't think it works that way. So, Rick, I honestly don't know, but I want to share an idea with you that might make me sound like a heretic, okay? At this point, we have doctorates, we have, 5 or 6 years of training. It takes a long time to learn to be an acupuncturist. And I think there's a place for that. But increasingly, maybe this comes back to my 8th grade self who loved shop class and kind of, there's a part of me that loves the trades. I wonder sometimes, especially as other professions are glomming on to what we do, and they'll take it and rebrand it and rename it, dry needling, things like that. It makes me ask this question. Does acupuncture belong to us, or do we belong to acupuncture? And if acupuncture belongs to us, all right, now we have to put up all these barriers and, circle the wagons, make sure other people don't take it away. But if we belong to acupuncture, we're the ones that should know more about acupuncture than anybody else. I wonder, I don't know if this is true, but I wonder, it's an inquiry I have. Maybe it's up to us to teach PTs how to do a modicum of safe acupuncture. Maybe it's up to us to teach nurse practitioners, here's a little acupuncture that you can do instead of prescribing that medication. I wonder if there's ways, because other professions are going to want to get their hands on needles and do something like acupuncture. Is there a way that we can midwife that process in a way? Or is there a way that we could train people not to do herbs, but just do acupuncture and do it well enough in, say, 2 years so they can go out and start helping people knowing that you will be learning acupuncture for the rest of your life. And maybe there's a place to have it be a trade. I don't know. These are the things I think about. I know it makes me sound like a heretic, but I'm often thinking outside the box. And as I look at where things are going these days, And sometimes I've even heard people talking about, look, enrollment in schools is down and the price to learn acupuncture is high. And, the NCCA themselves a while back said, in a few years, we may not even be in business anymore. And it makes me wonder, well, if that's true, what might be the opportunities that would be available to us? So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't think I'm going to step into that pool of alligators specifically with an opinion, but I would say this: I don't really like that we're identified as acupuncturists. I understand the value of that and the recognition, and that it's it's so remarkable, from the visual point of view of putting needles in people and not having blood. I mean, I understand it's the sort of our dog and pony show that gets people's attention. I remember how intrigued I was when I first saw it, or when you see it in movies or TV shows now.
Mm.
We're a technique of a rich and deep and wide system of complete medicine. And you do acupuncture as the result of everything you've gathered along the way of learning that medicine. And certainly, from the barefoot doctors and even what you're describing maybe as a trade of acupuncture, that could be done in less than 5 years of training, as far as just putting in, having a cookbook of needles and put a needle here and there. I recognize that. But for the potential and the capacity of what the medicine is and can be, the impact we can have in an individual's life, the impact we can have in society and culture, and even the spiritual evolution of the species, I really think that it's a lifetime of study. And it's the 5 or 6 years is an initiation where your vessel becomes open enough that you can receive and understand so much more. Sometimes I think I'm just, I'm 45 years into a practice now. I feel like I'm just beginning sometimes, and especially if it's just about putting needles in. Although I think that there's an intention and a resonance when I do a needling that probably reflects that I've been doing it for 45 years. But if I had to take the state boards now, who knows? Who knows?
Well, but the state boards are checking, are you safe? Do you know enough?
That's the ideal.
To get started.
That's the idea, but they've turned it into like an Olympian contest, I think, of how much information you can have and send out. So I think the more we honor the depth, complexity, I mean, certainly the complexity of human life, and even the trying to understand our medicine from within research, but not just efficacy of the treatment, but what's going on here. What's in the biofield? Can I do distance healing? There's just it's the capacity and the magic that's it's grounded, it's logical and it's rational. I think that in a way Western medicine is more obtuse as far as really what we know in terms of quantum physics and leading edge of science now. That this rational reductionist point of view is counter science almost, or counterintuitive. It's almost anti-intellectual in some ways. You hear when you hear the advertisements for drugs on TV, it's like, how do white people take it after they list the visuals showing these happy people, and the auditory is giving you, my God, you're going to have internal bleeding, you're going to have blindness, you're going to have tinnitus. There's a disconnect there. I'm sort of going off the field, but I want to maintain not just the integrity, but I'm going to use the word the depth again, and the completeness of the system of medicine. I don't think we've scratched the potential of what we can do, especially in complex, degenerative and long-term illnesses that no drugs responding to, or people are on 10 or 12 drugs. I'd like insurance companies to realize in many facets, we're going to save them money. If they come to us for carpal tunnel treatment, rather than have a surgery that's going to fail in 5 years, statistical probability, and start to embrace what we're doing. And, physical therapists have plenty of work in their fields, and chiropractors have plenty of work in their field. And again, it's not because I think that needling is this esoteric thing that you need to study year after year after year. That acupuncture is the expression of the depth of knowledge that a person acquires and is learning along the way and continues to deepen, so that when that needle is put in, there's a resonance and an intelligence and an intention that goes way beyond just the insertion of a needle.
There's a process that we go through that gets us to, I'm choosing this point and I'm going to needle it in this way. For me, that's the juicy part. For me, that's really what it's about. It's not just where the needle goes. It's how you get to knowing where the needle goes.
And a component of the training that I would like to see deepened and enriched is in communication, verbal and nonverbal communication, and what we share with our patients. If you study any sort of, I'm going to use the word hypnosis, but in the broadest sense of effective communication,
Mm-hmm.
the negative messages that come out of many practitioners, East and West, has to be acknowledged and recognized and changed if we're going to see the potential for healing deepen and grow.
Oh man, you know what? I think we could do not just a whole show, we could do a whole series on that. I think you put your finger on something, Rick Gold, that is near and dear to my heart. Because I think there's what we do in clinic, and it's very important, and we have to be good at it. We've got to have a good toolbox. We have to have great tools in it and know what we're doing with it. There's that. But there's also this piece of how we are in clinic that I think is really important. And you could put it under that rubric of communication or good communication or having rapport with your patients. I think there's something there. Skillful use of language, because how you use language really matters. And there's something there about leaving room for all the things that are there, but maybe not necessarily asking for attention at the moment, or they're part of the constellation of what's happening for a patient. But it's like you're only allowed to look at them from the corner of your eye. You know what I'm talking about? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like, what we teach is, the symptoms are what bring the person to the practitioner, and the signs is what the wise practitioner sees and recognizes. That's really takes you to the core of really what's going on with the person. And I think that only comes about not from a written questionnaire or a robotic intake, but it comes from human to human connection. And what our colleague and dear mentor and friend of mine, Ted Kapchuk, has shown in his research is it's this dynamic relationship is what sort of empowers the placebo effect.
Well, here's something interesting, and I've noticed this in my practice. When the mind makes the body ill, we call it hypochondria. When the mind makes the body well, we call it placebo. Like, dude, what's going on with the mind?
Yeah. Placebo used to be depicted as the devil, in the research model, where if 30% of the time that's going to be a positive outcome, that's a good base to work from, statistically. I don't want to in any way diminish the right herbal formula or even the right medication or the right points, but and I think, this was known in our medicine long ago, that the highest form of medicine is the practitioner, from the example of their own being, inspires the patient to become all they can be. That goes way beyond the formulas or the points or anything like that, that we inspire, because we haven't arrived, but we're trying to hone our tool and our being through the virtues that are the virtues of being a human being, and seeking to exemplify those and to nourish those.
I think there is for sure a place for that. I would also suggest there's a place not for that. So, we often hear about the higher, middle, and lower level of practitioners. I was talking with a friend the other day, about meditation and this and that. We're talking about avyokatesvara, who can appear as whatever someone needs to help relieve the suffering that they've got at that moment. This image was very impactful for me. It seems to me that there are patients who come to us and they've got knee pain. And you know what? Like Freud and the cigar. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes knee pain is just knee pain. And really, what does that patient need? They need someone to help them with the knee pain. Now, sometimes they'll come in and they've got knee pain. And in addition to the knee pain, there's this other stuff going on. It could be a kidney deficiency. It could be some kind of blood deficiency. It could be something very much that's a psychoemotive manifestation. Now, in that case, we need to appear differently and help at that level. I think it's really important to discern, to be able to use our discernment. What does this person need at this time? I always had a really hard time with, I'm just going to treat the spirit. Look, if the problem is the knee, treat the knee. But if the problem is the spirit, don't just treat the knee.
And I think that comes from our discernment and not projecting our own belief on every situation.
Okay. There's another whole conversation or two about dealing with our own beliefs in clinic. This, I think, is part of the how we are in our practices. And this, too, is part of what I think makes a practice so delicious over the period of time, being able to acquire a certain kind of discernment. And in the great privilege of being able to accompany people, as we go through this life.
As we walk people back home.
Walk them back home.
Walk them back home.
Yeah, like our other nice Jewish boy used to like to say.
So, my friend, thank you for joining your podcast today. Thank you.
Thanks for driving.
Thank you for being willing to share more about yourself and not just being the cipher, the host, asking all the questions. I really think that your audience is going to appreciate and respect you even more for who you are and what you've done to get to where you are. It's really deepened and enriched my recognition of who you are, and I want to thank you for helping our profession to remember, because I think that is a critical part of our self-awareness and the strength of our foundation. That we're not just hanging on the mast, being blown by the wind, but we're grounded in something very, very important, and the potential of what we can offer for healing, societal and personal, cannot be diminished or underestimated. And so those of you that are students, stay with it. Michael in his years, myself in my years in the practice, it is a privilege to be involved in this medicine, and especially in the Western world at this time in history with the seeming monolith of the Western medical model and the strength of the hospitals and the pharmaceutical companies. We have our place. We have a seat at the table, and we want to invite people into our home and sit at our table too, because we got some delicious food and some pungent herbs cooking, and we got some potent needles, and we've got some big open hearts and sharpening shins. And so it's a beautiful profession, and we're blessed to be part of it. And Michael, thank you for all that you've done to make us more self-aware and to introduce teachers. We when we're in our schools, we have our teachers that we just bond to, and we think, ideally, hopefully, that we just respect them so much. But you've allowed me to have teachers that I would have never met, that are all over the place, that embody a certain level of knowledge and wisdom. It's nectar. It's just so sweet to be able to drink from it. And there's no other way I would have been available to experience these other people. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's truly my pleasure. And I feel like I've been so fortunate that I've had a chance to sit down and talk with so many people. The vast majority of people on Qiological, they're not luminary practitioners. They're not, people in the spotlight. You may have never heard about them if you hadn't listened to Qiological, unless you were their friend and you just hang out with them as you go for a walk around the lake or something. I am so optimistic about the medicine we practice because I get to sit and talk with people who are just taking the principles and they're just working it in their clinic. They're not drawing attention to themselves. They're not even trying. They're just living good lives, helping people and learning about the medicine. And I am grateful that they'll sit down and talk to me for an hour or so and share with me what they've discovered in their work. It's a great privilege. I am so indebted to the generosity of the people that have sat down for almost 350 episodes now that I can share this. So truly, a thank you. There is no Qiological without the people who come to sit and have a conversation. And there is no Qiological without all y'all out there listening. So thanks for letting me do this. I'm still getting away with it.
And may you continue for a long time.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay. And with that, we draw to a close.
All right. Till next time. And I think you have to come back on again and talk about that, how we are in clinic some more.
Just ring me up, my friend.
Reflecting on this conversation with Rick, even though I was strongly repelled by conventional medicine in my youth, there was also a part of me that was attracted and curious about other ways of healing. I remember being interested in herbal medicine while still in high school. I was strongly anti-religious, but curious about spiritual development. I loved Sufi stories, Greek mythology, and attempted an essay on the Tao Te Ching in high school, which didn't get me a very good grade. And the teacher assured me I was misunderstanding it, which I'm sure I was. But all these curiosities, all these nudges off the path of the conventional, it set the trajectory that would eventually lead me to Chinese medicine. My story? Just a story. We all have some way of making sense of our lives. What I found most engaging in this conversation was Rick's North Star, that our medicine, it's not just for healing individuals, it also has something to do with our evolution as humans. I often enough have some resistance to that idea, but in this conversation, I found myself less pushing against that idea and more realizing that there is something in the principles and the practice of Oriental medicine that, because it arises from the principles and the processes of nature, because it recognizes duality and non-duality, it gives us a potent set of tools, not just for healing, but yes, for evolution. The challenge for me is how to use these for exploration instead of explanation. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.